Welcome to another episode of the Digital Calm. Clay Low here, and I'm here with Naomi, as you can see if you're watching this on YouTube. And it is your opportunity to sit back and relax and contemplate the big and small questions of life. That's what we're about here at the Digital Calm. Contemplation, the art and practice of, which we talked about in depth last week. So, what have you been up to since our last visit in the studio?
I've been up to so much. I have not stopped. I think I've been doing a lot of mummy things.
I hope you stopped because we talked about taking time out.
I know we
for
do
some contemplation. So I've hoped you had some moments to.
Yes,
contemplate.
I have. Yeah, I promise. Okay. I have.
That's
I actually did. In fact, you'd be particularly proud of me. Because I actually took a couple of hours out and did a really in-depth meditation. And
now you're talking about the
journal.
And it was
really interesting because it was a full moon yesterday. Or hang on, what day is it? Tuesday? Yeah. It was a full moon early hours of yesterday morning here in the UK. And That's always a good time to have a reflection, decide what you're going to let go of, what's come to completion, and to reflect and review and see kind of the progress that's been going on. And normally, because I really love the moon, so normally you would do that kind of just for the preceding kind of few weeks. But yesterday was quite a special full moon because it was in Pisces, and the new moon from Pisces was 6 months ago, around about the spring equinox. And now, of course, we're around about the autumn equinox. So actually, this has been not just about reviewing the last few weeks, but it's actually been about reviewing the last 6 months. And really, it's very, very interesting. I can feel a lot of things are changing, and I'm ready for a lot of things to change. So yes.
Ready for some change.
Ready for some change indeed.
That's a good song about being ready for change.
Go on.
No.
I'm sure there's several.
It's not
100,000.
It's not for this show to play on this one, I don't think. But
it's one of your other shows.
Yeah, it's just something about everybody could use some change, but it's a metaphor. He's in the waitress, and his girlfriend doesn't want to give the waitress any change or a tip, basically, because she wasn't a very good waitress. But he's like, everybody deserves some change, even though she was bad at doing what she was doing. So it's quite a good song.
Do you know what? Maybe one week we should pick a song, or maybe pick, 5 songs, and discuss those and the metaphors behind them, because that could be quite interesting and just something slightly different than we normally talk about.
Yeah, it's a lot of good stuff. A lot of stuff I listen to in the morning has nice messages in it. The one that I've been playing on repeat today is called The Shame of Life. And that's got some interesting metaphors in it as well. So, yeah, it's good stuff. So,
So do you want to tell us about your week before we dive into this week's topic?
Yeah, so in terms of, things I've been exploring this week, I've been looking at several things. I know we're going to talk about one that's been on my mind tonight, but I've been looking into things like mind hacking and what else? I'm just quickly scanning through my notes here. Mind hacking has probably been the bigger one, and I'm doing some stuff on appreciative inquiry, which is about conversation and focusing on the best of what is. So that actually fits in nice with what we do on the Digital Calm in terms of conversation. So, but it's you can use it on a personal sense, but it's quite big with change in organizations and facilitating conversations that change minds, basically. So that's been interesting, and maybe we'll do an episode on appreciative inquiry because it's a great methodology. Because we tend to focus on the things that are wrong or our weaknesses as opposed to focusing on the strengths and building on those strengths. So it's good. So yeah, so that's been. Work-wise, it's been busy as always, but reflecting-wise, got a lot of stuff brewing. So a lot of conversations I think we'll be having coming up in relationship to things I've been exploring that are in the percolator right now. Great stuff. I am so looking forward to, this conversation this evening, because we're going to be talking about identity. And I know we've talked about identity in previous episodes, and because it always comes and plays itself back in. But I think from for some of the work that we were doing during a break, I spent some time thinking about that whole sort of identity piece. This podcast itself has had its sort of evolutions and turns and trying to figure out what it wants to be, its identity. So it's a conversation that, and I'm going to turn it on its head. At least I'm wanting to approach identity from a different angle. I think where is kind of where I'm at with it. So, let's do an intro tune, because I didn't play an intro tune to start, but just let that percolate in your minds as you're listening to the podcast, and just think about identity and like what if you were to self-identify right now and declare what your identity is, what would that be? So elevate your mind and free your soul. That's what I'm trying to do here. That's what I'm trying to do. But there's a reason why I want to do a podcast like this. I'm trying to elevate my mind so I can free my soul. That's the mission I'm on. That is the mission. Outstanding. So, identity. Where are we starting on that? You were I think you had something about. I'll tell you what. Let me tell you why I came across the topic.
Perfect. That's what I was going to say. Given that you came up with it, what started you off on this, and where have you started to go with it? Because obviously, you've been ruminating on this for a while.
Yeah. So, I mean, what started it was this podcast and thinking about what do we want to do with it, and how this podcast fits into the rest of the ecosystem of Clay Low and what he does. And I'm referencing back to Simon Sinek here, and I think I maybe mentioned in the introduction, he has this book, or he's got a concept called Start With Why, and he did a TED Talk, How Great Leaders Inspire Action, and he reveals to folks about the golden circle, and that, if you want to inspire people to buy, to follow you, to listen to your ideas, then, you start with why. You start from the inside out versus, starting with the what or the how. And as I was thinking about the why and starting from the inside, and it just dawned on me that, and looking at the book, and maybe he just makes an assumption that you've already figured out the what and the how. I was thinking, if I start with the why, I don't even know what I do. So in figuring out my relationship with the podcast, it's like, well, why I do it, but I need to know what I do. So that's what made me question. My question was, do I begin with the why, or should I actually begin with what, as in what do I do? And then I can back my way into the sort of identity and the sort of why. So I think the question I was trying to ask or answer or contemplate was the fact that can I start with the what, to figure out what my identity is. And then once I have the identity, because identity informs what we do, then I could be more clear about, that I could do the different things to kind of make that identity congruent, if that makes sense. So that's where this sort of started. So
that's, I think, really interesting. I re-listened to Simon Sinek's, whether it was his audiobook. I think I re-listened to the audiobook last summer, not the summer just gone, but last summer, so 2020. And as I was listening to it, I remember kind of feeling, I was very enthused. I was energized by it. My energetic head, if you like, kind of cleared, and it felt good. And I was, yes. But then when I actually went away and kind of said, right, so now what? I couldn't do anything. I was kind of like, well, I'm not quite sure. So a very similar, I'm sure, differently done. But it was the same kind of concept, which was, well, I need to know what. The how always comes later once you've got your what, but I couldn't quite get it. And maybe that's because, I'm such an advocate, of course, of Stephen Covey, and you start with the end in mind. But yeah, I actually, although I'm very enthusiastic about Simon Sinek and his work and start with why, I can't really get my head around it.
Yeah, I'm fine with the concept. In fact, I trained the concept out. I think it was just so. I guess my challenge that I was challenging myself was to flip it the other way around and starting with the what. So essentially, what he's thinking about, if you're trying to inspire people, it's more about why you're doing what you do and not necessarily about what you do. And so that people, and we talked about this, people buying people, they want to buy into you. So who are you and what do you stand for? And those sorts of kind of questions that come out of the why center. And then they'll be interested in, what you do and how you do it. So I get that. And I think, as I was re-looking at his golden circle, I think there's just a natural assumption. And he kind of says it in his talk as well, that all the companies, that you already know what you want to do. So it's probably not a model to use if you're trying to figure out, what it is that what do you do? What do you do? If you're trying to figure out what you do still, if you're still in the figuring out what you do stage, then the model may be premature in that sense. And it's almost like you've got the model, but I'm going to start with understanding the why and craft my messages around that to attract people. So I get that. But it was good that I had that thought, I guess, and the question to say, okay, well, let's bump back into the what. But then that led me to the Robert Dilts. In fact, he didn't come up with the logical levels, but he talks about them a lot. But there's a concept of the logical levels. And for those who aren't familiar with logical levels, used a lot in NLP. I think Robert Dilts is a big proponent of the logical levels. So I started rereading this book, Structure of Belief. And logical levels, if you just imagine a triangle, on the bottom of that triangle, the bottom rung, the base, is the environment. So, and that is where you do it, when you do it. So it's the physical things that are around you. Then moving up to the next layer in the triangle would be behavior. So this becomes what you do. Then moving up from that is capabilities, and that's about the how. And then you've got beliefs and values, which is about the why. And then in the next level, the very top of it, is the identity, the who aspect. And I think there's some work on it a little later on. So that's where the original triangle stops in terms of, and I'm saying logical levels. Some people call it neurological levels. It stopped at identity, but now there's another part to that triangle that goes to the further apex, which is about spirituality, which then becomes the awareness of ego. But we won't go into that tonight. I'm going to stop at the original triangle top, which was identity. And so the reason why I was thinking, if I start with the what, so if I looked at my life now and say, well, what do I consistently do on a day-to-day basis? How is my time consumed? What is it that I'm actually doing? Yeah, go ahead.
So is it what you're doing, or is it the impact of what you're doing?
No, it's what I'm doing. So, for instance, I was looking at this and I'm thinking, a writer writes, a trainer trains, a coach coaches, doctor heals people, architect builds buildings. So what am I doing throughout my days and weeks and time? What are the things am I doing? Because if I could figure out what I'm doing, then perhaps then I can find that, well, what is that I'm doing? So what's the identity bit of that? If identity drives behavior, identity drives what you do. So if I self-identify as a coach, for instance, then my capabilities and my behaviors and the things that I'm doing consistently, then should be coaching. The coach coaches. And so then I could look at capabilities and skills I need to develop to be a better coach. I can look at the sort of beliefs and values that might underpin and help support the structure of being a coach. If I'm, if I'm an architect, same thing. So I think that's what I was curious about, to think, okay, well, because you think about it. So, if you look on your bios, and I don't know what's on your sort of Twitter bio or your face, wherever your social media profile is, and and this is just the concept of at least, sort of Britain and the US and the like, and other places, although some places in the world I've been, they don't go this place. But when you meet someone, it's, it's like, who are you and what do you do? And then the what do you do is the label that then becomes who you are. So, I'm Clay Lowe, I'm a coach. So then that's what people then have as a label, and then whatever association they have with that label, then that's what they assign to me. And, they create a picture and the archetype of a coach. They put whatever image that they have associated with a coach, that's what they then paint on top of me on that aspect. And it's one of the reasons why I've always resisted labels, because I'm quite a Renaissance guy. I'm like, the whole sort of Renaissance man, classic case of, as in I can do anything and everything, and I'm happy to learn how to do stuff. And so I don't, I'm not good with, I haven't in the past been good with, a label that says, you're this thing, because then that for me feels that then people, then they stop seeing me as the full boundary of who I am, or the full capacity of who I am, because they start to identify me with the label. Hold on to whatever thought you was getting ready to do. Unless you have a question. No, go for it. What do you got? What's your question?
No.
Do. Yeah, go for it.
Well, only if I've actually got a question.
Or a thought,
the thought that came in was, it was interesting. Recently I heard, and I can't remember if it was in Italy or Spain, that, basically sort of talking about childhood friends or lifelong friends. And what was being said was that, these friends may not have a clue what you do for your job, because they never talk about work.
Story.
Well, exactly. And I thought, isn't that really interesting?
That's the story I told you.
Oh,
my time in Spain.
Oh, there you go. So it was Spain then. And I couldn't remember, because I have a friend who's half Italian, and I was thinking, was it him?
It was Spain. And I was doing some, doing some recon for the ascent program that I run. And I went during the wintertime to Mallorca, and I never knew this, but I got there and I couldn't find a place to stay because it was winter, so everything was closed down. All the big giant, because we went there on holiday before, and it's like tons of places to stay. But wintertime, everything is shut, so I was getting desperate. It was like I drove all around the island looking for a place to sleep, but everything was closed. So finally, I thought, okay, well, they have a major airport that I flew in. They've got to have a hotel at the airport. So I was making my way back to the airport. And then just a few miles out from the airport, I was along the beach, and I was just seeing the hotel, and it was open. I was like, wow. And I stopped in it and stayed. And it turns out that and I got to get friends with the proprietor, and then his daughter did the night shift. So I used to come and talk to her, and we'd be talking, and it turns out she'd been to the States. And, one of the conversations, as you were just saying there, that we got into was the fact that, in the States, it's what do you do and what university did you go to? That's what everybody wants to know. And she was saying that, in Spain, or at least in her little community there, she's got friends, that lifelong friends, and she doesn't know what they do, because that's not a part of their greeting. That's not a part of their ritual, to say, well, what do you do? And what university did you go to? So I found that very interesting, that was that concept. And, back to that whole sort of label thing for me, and identity thing, that was, at that time, I was really tied to the idea that what you do is who you are, which has its own set of problems when you are tied to when the thing that you do defines who you are, or you let it define kind of who you are. But I want to explore that some more, because I'm now two things as a result of this contemplation exercise around identity is rethinking my position on labels.
Okay.
And then re-evaluating the whole idea about the do and the identity. But let's listen to some Leaning In by Blue States as you let that percolate. Just to take it slow on the digital calm, you gotta take it slow, chill out. You know, when I'm picking a playlist, I'm generally, when I'm listening to a song, I'm thinking, can I sit and like write to it or work to it? Can I have it on while I'm doing one of those sort of characteristic or one of those things, or just contemplating stuff? So yeah, if you're wondering how things make it into the playlist, that's that's all it makes. Like if I put my rock on, that's time for action and get up and do stuff. But when I put this kind of music on, it's for chilling and thinking.
And I think it's really important you mention that. And actually, whilst we were listening to those two songs, it made me think, oh, actually, the reason we're doing two songs together is so that if people want to get out their journal or a piece of paper or notes on their phone or whatever, and actually jot down some ideas that are coming to them, or anything that they want to explore later on, or, and actually, and we haven't said that this week, that's kind of a space for people to do that. And obviously, we're not saying anybody has to do anything. We're just saying we're offering you this space, whether it's to sit back in your chair and let your thoughts float by, or whether it's to actively engage with them by journaling or some other method.
Absolutely. So, this idea that I'm about to turn on its head, for me personally, I'm this why business and the identity business. And as I said, I used to really dislike labels. I kind of sided with sort of Kierkegaard, a Danish philosopher who said, once you label me, you negate me. And basically was saying once you label someone, you kind of cancel out their individuality, and then you end up replacing it within the boundaries of that label. So the individuality has then become restricted within that label. And then the people then who accept that label for you are no longer accepting you as a person and for the person who you really are, but they only understand you through the limits of that label. And I just hated the idea of that. It's like, I'm a coach and I'm a trainer and I'm this and that, because I can do lots of things. I'm not just limited. I'm more than just a 2D character. So, but I'm editing that now, I think. Yeah.
As in, you're editing the thought that having a label negates you.
Yeah. Or yes. I still think that, but I'm editing my relationship to it. So I have a belief that, when we say identity, it's actually a self-identity. So I can give myself whatever identity that I want. So that's why I've been referring to things as self-identify. So I can self-identify as a facilitator or a trainer or like. So I'm okay with that. I'm okay with switching identities. But what I've come to realize is that while labels do negate you from another person's perspective, and if you let it negate you, it can. I think, from a herd mentality, people need the label in order to know how to respond to you. And if you're, an independent business person like myself, and yourself, because ultimately, we need clients and we need customers. They need to know how to relate to that. So they need to know that I'm a coach or a trainer or a facilitator, so that they know how to respond to that. If they can't tell that, if they don't have a sense of certainty of that label that's negating all your other things, then they're going to seek certainty elsewhere.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
So I totally agree, and I've obviously had a very similar well, not necessarily very similar, but I've had a similar kind of thought process over the years. So I don't want to be pigeonholed, because that is kind of, well, if you can only see this bit of me, then how do you know the real me? But actually, do people need to know all of us, or do they just need to know the bit that's relevant to them at that time? And you're absolutely right, Claire. I mean, you and I are both self-employed. So people need to understand what we do rather than who we are. They will decide with a kind of a gut feeling if they like us or not, or if they can trust us, which is really what's important. You know, can I trust you to do this job, whatever this job may be? But if they don't know what we do, if they don't have that label, then they can't fit us into the hole that they're looking to fill. Exactly. But people need to put us in a box. I mean, that's the thing, you know, we can't say that we are, you know, actually I'm a financial, I was going to say, even, you know, you can't say you're a financial whiz. You know, you need to say, actually, I'm a forensic accountant. And then people can understand, okay. And that's all they need. And if you think about it, when we're training, you know, it's rare that we would discuss or share or kind of deliver everything all at once. We start with the journey at the beginning, and then the learning and the development kind of unfolds. We might facilitate that using our coaching skills, or our facilitation skills, or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah. I think I always had just a philosophical disagreement with it. It wasn't a logical bit. It was when I was in my pure Morpheus mode, as in I wanted to wake everybody up. Like, why do you have to be a robot? And you need that. Why can't you be enlightened and evolved and have a bigger thinking than that? So that I was coming from an idealistic place that says, actually, are you aware that you are limiting your own mind by having to need this label? And so that's where I was coming from. It wasn't the fact that, you know, I wanted people to know who I was. I wanted people not to be confined. I wanted people not to be part of the herd. I wanted people to be independent thinkers. I wanted people to, you know, be a level above the herd thinking, the herd mentality. And so that was the crusade that I was under. And hence why I resisted it personally, because I was like, well, I don't want to be bound down to, you know, being controlled in that way. So I was trying to wake everybody up. Now I don't care if you guys all sleep, so stay asleep if you like.
and you see, and again, I thought about this long and hard, because, you know, it's not, in my belief, and obviously you've got to this point in a different route than I have. It's not our job, if you like, or it's not our role to wake people up, as in not to actively. But if we present and if we share our thoughts like we do on the Digital Calm, and through particularly your blogging and your presence on social media, then
we have radicals, so like Jesus did, and all these other guys, they woke people up. You know
yes,
what I mean? Yeah,
but
they
Jesus...
woke people up. I'm not comparing myself to Jesus. I'm saying, you know, in my head, and my favorite philosopher, of course, Nietzsche, it was like, yes, wake people up. Hence the role that I wanted to play.
So I'm not saying that you're not waking people up. I'm just saying
I wanted
that
to directly do it. I know you're just saying that,
and that's kind of the bringing the ego into it.
But was it ego? Well, ego is kind of almost in everything. I don't think it was the ego thing. It was like a mission, as in, you know, that this is something that I had it to do, which is, you know, I mean, you look at, I guess it was just that space to say, okay, well, here's a mission that I want. You know, people are passionate about a lot of different things, and for me, it was like, you know what? If I could just get people to see, and I've, you know, and there's just loads of people that I've interacted with, and they've been like, oh yeah, and we've kind of moved, and they've kind of come out of that space, which was great. I think I just kind of got to a place where, and it's probably me, I've just gotten tired of the crusade. So maybe that's a bad thing, that I've gotten tired of the crusade, and now I'm just becoming an ordinary dude because I'm tired of the crusade.
Nobody could ever accuse you of being an ordinary dude. But I think actually what you're saying, it very much replicates. If you think about people when they first find NLP, or which is neuro-linguistic programming, in case people who are listening don't know, when people first become coaches, like, you can see it now. It's so obvious. It's like a kindergarten child trying to hide sweets, you see it. And so you see people go out and they want, in every conversation, they want to coach people and they want to share their knowledge. And it's fantastic. And it's really lovely to see that enthusiasm and that zeal. But then as time goes on, I think, there's a realization, I suppose it's a maturing in the understanding that
giving up. I'm just thinking of crusaders. I'm thinking of people who want to change the world, who never give up, because if they gave up, we wouldn't be where we are, but they kept going despite. Whereas and maybe I'm being hard on myself to say, well, I've just given up because I wasn't moving fast enough or making the change in the world that I wanted to do. And so it's like, all right, well, forget that then. I'll find something else to do. Whereas some other people, they do stay the course.
For what it's worth, I don't think you have given up. I think you're just finding different mediums, because all your information, but all your information is out there, and it's out there for people to share. Because if you're talking to somebody and they're not ready to be awoken in the way that you're kind of going into do,
I want them to be unplugged.
You'll shut them down, or you'll freak them out, and that's, in my mind, that's irresponsible. That's unhealthy. Yeah. So it is about meeting people where they are, where they're ready to be met.
If I was playing my role of a coach, I would say yes. But remember, I wasn't trying to be a coach. I was trying to be a radical revolutionary.
Well, that's a whole different ballgame.
Exactly. So I wasn't trying to, I wasn't looking to be a coach and to help people. I wasn't trying to be a healer or a coach or any of that things. I was just wanting to be a radical thinker, and it's like some of my heroes, just to say, boom, I'm going to poke you right between the eyes and make you wake up. But that was, that wasn't another game. And, I guess, maybe idealism or what have you, it could have been a part of that. I don't know. Anyway, so that's that. So that was then. The now of it is, re-looking this idea about the label, and looking at the label from not so much that people can put me in the box and know how to relate for me, but to help me to help me with on the rest of the logical level. So if I have a clear sense of I'm going to self-identify as this. So in order to be that, here are the capabilities that I need. Here's the environment that I need around me to make that happen. Here's some beliefs and values I need to hold so that this self-identified self can be congruent. And so that's kind of where I've moved to with that, and not for others, but for me, so that I can understand how to construct the things around me, so that I have this congruency or integrity about my whole of my sort of being. And some of it comes down to the fact of, I still hold that model of to make your work and your play one and the same, so that, for you, there is no distinction between your work and your play. From this, and part of the driver behind that was the fact that we spend so much time at work. So it's like, if I'm going to be wasting my life, spending my life working, then it might as well be the same as my play. then life is good, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think that's really important. And that links with, in my prep for the show, I was looking at archetypes. So for me, we started off with this thought of, we know that identity drives behavior. And it was kind of how's that linking and how does behavior drive identity? And so I kind of went the archetype route. So I didn't actually go and look at any of Jung's stuff. I actually went to Caroline Myss. And I picked up a couple of her books, particularly. And there was one which is, I love it. So it's just called Archetypes, and it's a beginner's guide to your inner net, which I thought was very clever. And in it, what she's done is she's distilled kind of modern archetypes, if you like. And each of these archetypes, she's given a whole kind of list of things that are really useful. So the archetype family that you fit in, other expressions. So, like you were saying about, for example, being a teacher, you might also be a caregiver, or you might be a nurturer, or what have you. And then she talks about things like your life journey. So what actually is your life journey? What's your life pattern? Your unique challenge. So i.e., if you're that particular identity or that particular archetype, what are the challenges that you might have through which you grow and you develop? And then there's a whole load of things, but including things like the behavior patterns and the characteristics. And it's just, I just think it's really interesting. And then she's written a whole lot about all these different archetypes and recognizing if you're one and how to step into it. Because sometimes I think, we almost know our identity, but we don't know how to be who we are. And Caroline Myss's work, I think, really can help people bridge that gap, if you like. But yeah, so I shared that because you're saying obviously about, that the environment and the people and the behaviors and recognizing who you are. And sometimes we think we are something and we're not,
Yeah, no,
we're not that committed.
I like the old archetypes as the original stories for, well, there's lots of different archetypes, and they're like the original model to which we're all sort of tied into and or copy. They exist for you to learn from the sort of architect, I think. So, I think that works. I think that plays into helping, as you're strengthening your identity, using archetypes to help you strengthen your identity within that archetype. Again, if it just then flows down the neurological levels, then, so if you self-identify in that space, then okay, well, what do I need in place to help me be congruent throughout all of my life? So what skills, what behaviors, what values, belief do I need to hold? Because one of the ways of using that tool, the neurological levels or logical levels, is, if you're using it in a sort of change work or coaching capacity, you're able to see at what level people are stuck at and then help them at that level, and basically to get back congruent again by addressing the part that's out of whack, really. So for instance, if it's at the how level, capabilities, well, we can go on a course and learn the skill or get a mentor to improve your capabilities, at which then would bring everything back in line, and that sort of thing. So I think it's so the journey that I've been on with it in its overall sense was, again, lining up where this work that I'm doing in relation to the podcast, how it relates to all of, the space or the persona or the person that I am. And I want to use the word sort of creating for this next sort of leg and or journey. And so hence I decided to start with what versus the sort of why. And because I really just wanted to tap into the effortlessness of because I'm already doing stuff. So it was about understanding what is the stuff I'm doing and where does it then relate to on the other end. Versus if I start at the other end, the why end, then I've got to go and try and change the things that I do and change habits and all that. So I kind of wanted to back end to it from what I already do, so I don't have to add anything apart from searching to see where it kind of links up. That's all. A congruency. Is there a congruency between who you are and what you do right now? So is your life in integrity?
Ooh, well, I would say yes, and the bits that aren't, I'm working on. And actually, that kind of came out as a result of a question you asked me on an earlier podcast, probably about 6 months ago, actually, maybe, in fact, around that spring equinox I was talking about at the beginning of the show. But you were saying, we were talking about values, and we obviously had a whole show kind of around this conversation, but in the middle, you said, are you living according to your values? And actually, there was one area where I really wasn't. So I have a very strong value of respect. And sometimes that can actually be quite, I want to say, stultifying. Sometimes it can be quite limiting because, when you have such respect for other people, but actually the person I maybe wasn't respecting was myself or other people or particular other people. And I realized that there was a couple of people that I care for very deeply, who I kind of wasn't holding in respect at that time. So that started me off on a journey, and I was able to change that behavior instantly as soon as you made me aware of that. And then in the last 6 months, I have been thinking, okay, so actually, am I congruent? Do I share who I really am? And even conversations that we've had, actually, I think I've brought in archetypes, but I think even my shadow identity, if you like, or my shadow archetype has been at play. And I don't think I necessarily have been portraying actually the capable, intelligent woman that I believe that I am. So
if I ask you, what do you do? What do you do?
So my immediate response is, do you mean work-wise? Or do you mean all the different roles?
No, work-wise, what do you do?
I facilitate change.
Okay. So you facilitate change, but no label to that other than facilitate change.
But you think about the difference between our employment history, if you like, or the success of our work in terms of maybe how many people we're working with, or whatever that may look like. So when I sort of first started doing this on my own outside of being employed, so being self-employed, I was talking about being a change agent, and people had no clue what that meant. Now, on a one-to-one conversation, absolutely fine, because I could explain it in a way that resonated with that individual.
Okay, so let me ask the question a different way then. What do you tell yourself then that you do? So you said, so that I can understand it, you say you facilitate change, but
no, that's what I say. So I facilitate change.
You say to yourself, that's what you tell yourself that you are not. So pretend I didn't ask the question. How are you self-identifying? That's what I'm asking
you. And that makes me smile at the moment because, of course, self-identification is very much in the news and in the current world, but from a very different perspective. Yeah. So I struggle with this. I struggle with answering this question. I think, well, how do you identify yourself? So I'm a woman, I'm in my 50s. And this comes back to, I can tell you the roles that I play, but can I tell you who I am? No, I'm a ball of flame and light, and, I turn up and change happens. But is that my identity? Meh, whatever.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I was, which is why I've gone on this journey, because I think there needs to be a congruency to help out on the capability and the behavior side. So, just as I just kind of lost the thought a little bit. So, for clarity, so if we're talking about mental clarity on the show as well, so if you don't have mental clarity, then there's stuff and we're doing stuff and you're going to do stuff because you wake up and, whatever's going on is happening. But can you be intentional without clarity? And so for me, this is why I've been going on this bit, because I was like, I want to have absolute clarity. I'm not saying that I'm in a box and I can never be anything else. What I'm saying for myself in terms of the self-identifying is so that, one, I could be crystal clear about what that is, so that I can be crystal clear about the things that I create, and so that it kind of all hinges together and satisfies both ends of the equation, satisfies the person looking this way towards me, and then me looking out and providing stuff for a structure for myself. And I know I rarely use the word structure for self for me. But it provides that. It provides, like if I'm painting has a certain things that need to happen and elements that need to. So if you wanted to create a harmonious picture, anyway, something that if you're not trying to create chaos and disturbance in people, there's a certain set of structure and rules that kind of go with that, and so in essence, to make the things that I want to happen, that I needed that clarity. Which, you held up a card a moment ago about seeker. Now, there was I strongly identify with that as an archetype, as a seeker, and my natural thing is I just like seeking for stuff for its own sake, that I don't have to have a purpose. So I got all these books in this room, and there's no connection between them other than the fact that they're all books, so it's not like a whole bunch of books on, on some narrow topics, because I want to be an expert in something. I've got so many different kinds of books because I didn't want to be an expert in anything. I just wanted to know everything. And the more that I could know, the more happier I was about everything, not just a thing. No, I get that what you're saying, as in, Anyway, so that's why I was doing what I'm doing, is I didn't want to be in that space anymore because of what I'm trying to create and to bring into fruition, and because we don't have, time is finite for everyone. So again, this helps with putting all those pieces so that they line up, so that I can release any conflict with things around me and what I'm doing and with others, so I could eliminate that conflict, because it becomes one and the same. And there's a congruency then there.
So that's really interesting. As you were talking, a variety of things have gone through my head, but what you were saying about releasing any conflict kind of came as I was listening to you, and I was thinking, well, in a way, this is how this podcast came about, in that I felt I had no identity. I had no clear identity. So I was a mother, I was a wife, I'm a carer, I'm kind of run my own business, and all of these things, maybe a friend, and kind of all of these things were roles that I was playing, but there was no clear congruence of who Naomi was in the middle of all of that. And I kind of see it a bit like almost like sort of a very I've forgotten the word. It's a maths phrase where you've got circles going round and they overlap.
Concentric circles, or Venn diagram.
Venn diagram, that's it. And it's kind of like, a flower. A child might draw a flower, and you have the circle in the middle, and then you have, I would say 5, but in my case, it's about 15 petals going round, and then this Venn diagram. So people, and when I'm teaching, certainly from the wellbeing side, I quite often talk about a diamond, and you can see the different facets of the diamond. It's the same diamond, but seen from those different angles. And I'm sure I'm not the only person to use that analogy. But in all of that, it was, you were talking about releasing the conflict. And I was thinking, gosh, this is kind of me fighting to find out who I am, because I've lost me in the process. And I just picking back up on the point where you started on this, when you don't know who you are anymore because you've been playing roles for so long that you have forgotten who is you and actually how, and this is grammatically incorrect, but how you be. How do I be me? What is it that I do to be me? When you have that, you have no strong core. You've got nothing to tether yourself to. You've got no clear compass to guide you. And you are completely adrift. Well, that was everything that was kind of going on for me, even though I was doing what I was doing and living, and existing on a day-to-day basis. And that's partly where the wisdom experience originated from, was that journey that if I say been on, that sounds like I'd finished it. I think this is a never-ending journey, but it was about creating a place where people could come and experience their own wisdom, where they could have conversations that allow them to reveal to themselves who they are, that they could have experiences, whether it's doing their journaling, whether it's working with a coach, whether it's reading a book, whether it's listening to a song, whether it's going to work every day and thinking, you know what, if I just changed my mindset, or even if I just changed which cubicle I go for a wee in, is this going to change my identity? How will this behavior affect me? And will it help me reveal to myself who I really am?
Yeah, and I know that my journey is into that space because I firmly know who I am. So I've got a complete concept of what that is. So I don't have that conversation that floats around. So this is more about, for me in this particular stage and entity that I'm in, it's knowing what I want to create and now creating the persona around that to make the thing come to its fruition.
So if you're creating the persona around that, and I know that that's the restriction, if you like, that language imposes, because that almost sounds artificial. And I know
it is 100%.
Well, I know that you're really authentic with what you're doing. Yeah. You completely are not just committed, but it is from every cell of your being.
But because the belief for me is that identities we're an infinite kind of being. So before I was a fighting of and trying to make everybody, see how I see the world. So, so I'm not attached to an identity. So I'm not attached to it. Hence why I can change it. Now, I'm not saying that I want to go off and pretend I'm somebody to you that I'm not. What I'm saying is I know what I want to create. Hence why I need to create the persona. Hence why the logical levels work, because then I can say, okay, well, if that's the persona that I'm creating for this thing, then what are the capabilities that I need to have? What are the behaviors then that I need to exhibit in practice so that identity remains congruent and it is authentic in its congruency. And so that's where that is. So it's almost, for me, it's that's another conversation on the who am I.
Who am I being the question of identity, I suppose, or is it? So what we didn't even start off with this, and me, normally I like to start with a dictionary definition, but we didn't tonight. Who am I? What do we mean by identity? Is it who am I, or is it what am I?
It's probably a little bit of both. If we're looking at the neurological levels, it's all those. It's a who, it's a what. That makes up the sort of, and above that, if you're looking at the super person, there's even more of you than the other things that sort of sit sort of below that. And I was looking at some stuff I'm doing with the equality, diversity, and inclusion, and we're looking at intersectionality. And there's a concept there on identity, but it looks at the subcategories of identity: age, race, socioeconomic background, your politics, your sexual orientation, your marital status. All those things go up to make up your identity. and they all play a sort of part into that. So yeah, I think the identity is a who and a what in that.
But then aren't the behaviors the what? Or again, is this coming back to Venn diagram time?
Yeah, well, I think so. From a macro level, it's a who and a what. So, what is a human being? What is a person? It's that thing. So, what is a person? So, what is an identity? And then it is the why aspect of identity. And then, if I'm thinking, I mean, we're using the same adjectives, behaviors, the things, the do, values, why you're doing what you're doing. So they're fixed. So the sort of, I guess, the what and the how are fixed to the idea of that, why you do what you do aspect versus what are you, and then asking the question in that sort of sense. So it's almost mixing the I don't know, is that the right word? The natural and then the supernatural, or the spiritual bit with this bit. Because I think the spirituality opens up a different aspect of, but that's when the what am I comes into the fold. I think when when we go up to the level and we start to look at spirituality. So what am I? Am I a energy? Am I an angel that's incarnate? Am I an infinite being, or am I am I just all of us? That whole you are me and I am you is actually, there's only a singular entity, but we've divided ourselves into a billion people just because we were bored. I mean, that's a whole nother level of discussion.
Well, that links with the Kabbalah. So yeah, go on.
Yeah, but I'm just saying for me, that would be a whole other topic.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. Yeah.
In that sort of space, which is why I said on the neurological levels when we were looking at it at the beginning that they added that other bit to the triangle, but we were just going to stop at the just the normal identity human space, because I think that I love to explore the sort of the awareness of a greater self or a greater entity, if there is in fact is one, in that space and time.
Yes. I think definitely. And there's just, I have so many kind of thoughts bubbling. And I think kind of it almost comes down, no, it doesn't come down to. So sometimes when I get too lost in these kind of philosophical thoughts and I start to feel untethered, or I start to feel ungrounded or spaced out from reality in a variety of ways, then I kind of go, okay, so what's actually relevant here? What's really important? And then this is when I would look at the identity and the behavior question on a much more practical level, if you like. So that almost applied, I would say applied wisdom. I'm not necessarily sure it's even wisdom, but I think as you're growing up, you have an identity that's kind of given to you. So if you think about school, we all know, oh, he's the clever one, or she's the cheeky one, or she's the pretty one, or he's the good looking one, or he's the athlete, you get the idea.
It's a label. That's the kicker guard one. You're labeling me.
Is right. Exactly. Yeah. And I'm not sure that it negates people, but I think what it does is it takes an aspect of their,
it negates the totality of who they
are. Absolutely. And that I completely agree with. Yeah. Exactly.
It doesn't negate them as a human being. It negates the capacity to be not just a cheeky person, but a person with lots of aspects of themselves.
Absolutely.
But like you're saying, if you label me as cheeky, then that's identity you give me. Then, I look to conform to that identity because I want approval.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And not everybody wants approval, I get that, but actually most of us do, because that's the society that we're growing up in.
There's a rare breed that doesn't.
Exactly.
Because we're a herd animal, aren't we? I mean, so most of us are seeking some form of approval and recognition of some sort or another.
which I think probably comes back down to, you know, that whole the belief that you know, the subconscious mind is how we perform, or how we are in the first 7 years, and everything that we soak in then is then inside the subconscious mind. There is no conscious mind until that point. And that's when I think we take in sort of, well, actually, we take in what's going on around us, maybe, or we hear what people say to us, and then that develops into our identity, whether or not that is who we were. You know, someone's seen us at a particular time. In fact, actually, so you know, we got a particular type of dog earlier this year, and when I was reading about the breed ahead of getting the dog, I was thinking as I was reading, gosh, I'm already putting kind of a personality or characteristics onto this dog. And it was supposedly sort of a one-man dog. And then when it came, and I thought, yes, it's a one-man dog. You know, is it going to be mine, or is it going to be my husband's, or is it going to be the boys'? And then I thought, no, hang on a minute. It doesn't have to be. We can all interact with this, you know, with the puppy, with this dog, in the way that we want to. And I'm sure he can kind of cope with all of us because he's an intelligent dog. I've gone off the track a little bit, but just hopefully giving some ideas of things for people to think about.
Yeah, and it's, you know, when you get to that point where you know, wanting to unpack the identity that you were given by others, because now you're going on that inward journey of individuation that Jung talks about. You know, there's a journey to unpick all of that, the imprinting that you got. Timothy Leary talks about the whole sort of imprint aspect, and you mentioned about, you know, show me the person at 7 and I'll show you the man or the woman. You know, so all that imprinting that takes place in the first 7 years is against your will, basically. Is what your parents and it's against your will.
No,
you have no idea.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's against your will.
It's
just you're not aware of it. That doesn't mean that it's against your will.
You don't think?
No.
I had no choice in the matter. So how was my will involved in that?
So
I didn't get to pick my name. I didn't get to choose how I wanted to be. I didn't get to choose my values. They're all imposed on me.
But so I kind of have to have I have a different view. So when I was carrying my babies, I chose their names with my husband according to, and I can't explain it, but this was probably when my spirituality journey really started, or certainly came more into being. I'd probably been dabbling really for maybe 5 or 7 years at that point. But when I was pregnant, like, you know, for example, when I was pregnant with my second son, you know, we knew that both of them were boys. We didn't know from the scans, but we just knew they were both boys. And I knew that my second son needed his own identity, which is why we found an old English surname that had no relevance to anything or anyone.
At what point in that conversation did he participate in choosing of that name?
He was an embryo at the time, but he loves the fact that we did that, you know, because it's allowing him to be who he is,
and he gets to get the approval of mom and dad by saying that he loves it and the like. So of course, I mean, not overtly, unconsciously.
So
if we
can never prove that one way or the other.
Yeah, if he's a human being, then that is a dynamic that is playing, of the approval of mom and dad.
So is that, because I was curious about this, because when I was thinking about this for you and the subconscious and wanting to please, and you are not that, I would say you're very much outside of that. Whether or not that's 100% true, I don't know.
100% true. I'm a total praise monkey.
Because
I grew up with a mom who was, you know, you had to be the best at everything. So I had to excel. I had to, you know, excel. You got to be the best at everything. Wasn't allowed to quit things. I had to, if I was going to participate in it, then I had to be the best. And of course, you want to get the approval of your mom and dad. But
in the way you talk, you never, ever indicate that you're looking for approval.
I know, because I've come to understand come to understand in my journey why I do the things that I do and where it came from. You know, I think we talked about the breadcrumb, but only so I'm aware that some of the underlying drivers of motivation, if you peel it right way back where it came from, was from that very beginning of imprinting of you got to do this and you got to be this, and even my relationship with other people, as in don't rely on anybody but yourself. You can't depend on even me. So all those things are, grounded into me. I've become aware of them, and I understand when they show themselves and play themselves out. I mean, even in our relationship, so I know that you are a busy person, but when I do the sort of the stuff that I'm doing in the background, or I text you and I don't hear a reply forever, then it's like, why am I doing what am I doing? Because she's obviously not aware of what I'm doing or doesn't care what I'm doing. But that's the kind of conversation that kind of goes on. But I'm aware of that happens. But where it comes from. So yeah, I'm a total praise monkey. And
okay.
So, and for instance, even like if you weren't doing this podcast, it would be easy for me to give it up. So I do what I do because of you. If it was just to my own devices, I would just go do something else or do other things. It's like having a lifting partner. You work harder because you're doing it, and you don't miss the gym because even when you don't feel like going, you don't want to let your body down. So, doing this podcast in collaboration, I don't want to let you down. And so it's like, okay, yeah, so do, push, go, take you out of the equation. And it's like, all right, well, I can happily move on to, something else and do some other things. So yeah, it still plays. I just happen to be aware of it, and I know the forces that operate within that.
Okay, so just to, hopefully you've seen, because actually in the last week there are at least 2 messages where I have specifically said, I am really grateful for what you do, because, but that's
another thing that's interesting. So those go right by me. I don't like those ones. So that's a whole other thing.
So what do I need to do? Yeah. So let's get this recorded. I am incredibly grateful for what you do.
See, I don't need that bit. I just need to. It's more that, oh yeah, that was cool or what. I don't know. But I guess maybe grateful is I don't want you to be grateful. I just want you to, be a part of the game.
Which I'm trying. I'm really trying to do. And likewise, I'm kind of almost only doing this because you're doing this. And so together we're doing this. I love doing it, but equally, if we didn't do it, of course I would find something else to do. In fact, it would make life easier. But the fact that we've committed means that, we do turn up week in, week out. And I know we took the summer off, but absolutely. But no, think about it. You don't need to think about it, but very, very clearly, you do all the technological side. I struggle. Even tonight, my laptop's playing up. It doesn't matter how carefully I spec'd my laptop and how much I spent on it. It still doesn't work the way I'm expecting it to. So to take that further, I couldn't do the technological side. You get it up, you make it happen. And that's great, because actually what I've been doing for the last 2 years, I kind of look back and I realized is that I am not reinventing my identity, because actually I see now very much where my identity is. But I have been refinding myself within that. My boys are getting older. It's a really interesting phase that I'm in literally right now. They need me less, but they need me more at the same time. So I'm physically parent taxi, like I said, I think it was at the beginning, I'm obviously still doing the school run. I'm taking, one of them to a part-time job. kind of at the weekends now, it feels like all I'm doing is driving around.
Yeah, no, we know that phase. I've lived through that.
Exactly. So it's physically time chunks, but it's also gifting me a fantastic opportunity to evolve my relationship with my boys, and to evolve my relationship with myself. Who am I now? What do I want to do now? How am I going to spend, kind of the next, and in my head, I've kind of got the next 5 to 10 years, into my 60s. And it's coming really soon, because at some point, my youngest is going to learn to drive and get his own car. And suddenly I'm going to have another 12 hours a week. And I kind of went, 14 hours now. And I thought, okay, so what does that mean? And one of the archetypes was an athlete. And that's a person who basically explores the world through their body and what they can do with their body. And I looked at that and I thought, I'd really love it if that was the case. But it is so not me. I love my body, but it's not me. But it made me think of you, because obviously talk about the gym and so on and so forth. So yeah, so I enjoy what we do together. I find value in it, and I definitely couldn't do it without you.
Well, you could do it without me. Because all it means you would have to do is just learn the things that you need to learn.
I'm not motivated to do that, because that's the technological side.
But that's a whole nother thing. I know that you're capable of doing it. I don't buy it, that space. But yeah, so anyway, but that came into this. I mean, the whole point of that segment there was the fact that, I think we kind of got into that aspect, as in your identity is imposed upon you and it's against your will, or it's not part of you don't have any say in it. It's just on you, because you don't get to participate, but you've got to spend a lifetime unpacking it.
And getting thrust into other identities along the way. Yeah. I never wanted to be a carer. In fact, I expressly did not want to be a carer. But here I am, and I'm going to be a carer probably for the rest of my life.
And this is glad you just said that, because partly this exercise that I've been doing over the last week is why I've been observing what are all the things that I do. And then how do I package all of those things up so that I wouldn't say that thing, that I didn't want to be this thing, that it's all one package. And so therefore, when this comes, then it's like, oh, I can approach that thing with joy, because it's a part of the gig. It might not be fun, but it's part of the gig. So now I'm happy. So that's the sculpting that I've been doing, that's. I'm gonna go to a song and we'll come back, and we'll get ready to wrap this up. And I'll reveal to everyone my current list of self-identified spaces, and maybe, but probably not, I'll go into what behavior that it triggers or covers. All right. That was Blue Foundation, Grand. All right, so I think it's about time to get ready to wrap this up. I said I would reveal my current list of my self-identity pieces, and these are labels. And they're labeled personal growth microblogger and content creator. So that fuels the type of writing that I do in the form that it does take, and the fact that I need to be writing and creating, or otherwise I can't have the label. So it fuels that behavior. Coach, facilitator, trainer, those have stayed the same, because, I do those every day. Today I didn't do any training today. Did I do any training today? No. But I was coaching and facilitating today, but didn't do any training, but that's fine. Learning experience designer, which is a new name, I guess, for the evolved name from instructional designer, which I do a lot of design and of programs, but now moving that on to creating learning experiences, not just training programs. So that encompasses digital and in person and social learning and just the whole gambit of that whole learning journey. And then, of course, consultant, that hasn't changed. That just another aspect of the things that I do. So the newest one on the list is that one at the top, that whole sort of personal growth microblogger and content creator, because it's the now label to cover my online activity. So that's my current list of empowering self-identity pieces.
I like that. The fact that you put the term empowering, or the word empowering there. So you're empowering self-identification. That's good. I like that.
Yeah, so inform what I do. Yeah. Okay, so this idea, I think we started.
Although, I'm sorry, I've kind of just got to, because we did talk before about seeker. So actually, all of those are very, if I say output focused, they're actually very work focused. So even though, what you're blogging about and creating content on is personal growth, and I know that quite often you share with us what you're going through personally or what you're questioning personally. But actually, those three, I would say, are all very, the outward looking.
Yeah, they are, absolutely.
So where's your seeker identity gone? Where's your spirituality? Where's your... gone?
So they are, I guess how you can look at it either way. If you want to look at it at the top of the logical levels and or Maslow's triangle, then that's the super bit, and they're in place, and I don't need to work on them. Or you can look at the other way, that they are the base that informs the big I in that space. So I'm not in the space to figure out who I am. I'm not in the space. So I think like the seeker would be that other level, that level of my spiritual driver, or the that other, that the thing the you that you are, the big I guess would be it. So I think that would be another conversation, which if we wanted to talk, those aspects, the seeker and those things, but they will be, they're like the color of my skin, if you see what I mean. So it's just there, isn't it? So the seeker bit is just
so fully integrated that it's through every pore of your being.
Yeah, it'll inform all those sorts of things. So those are 100% very much an outward focus, outcome focused pieces.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, yeah, so there you have it. That's the idea here. So in summary, I'm thinking, as we started this out with this idea of, do you start with why or what? And I think that very much depends on where your level of development is. I think the Simon Sinek's golden circle concept works if you are established and now you're just trying to orient yourself in terms of how you present yourself to the outside world. So yes, start with the why so that people will buy into what you do because of your why, your purpose that you're driving from. But if you don't have that, if you're starting from a place of where am I in time and space, then maybe starting with what, taking a look at what you do, what you do on a consistent basis, what do you do as a natural course of you breathing through each day, and what are those things, and connect up the dots then to see what, if that can inform what identity label that you could put on top of that. So then you can look at what capabilities and the skills you need to so that then further develop that particular brand of who you might self-identify at that point in time. So it's been useful for me to go through that exercise and to take that particular, contemplate those things, which I've been doing I've probably been doing that over the last several coffee mornings. Yeah, that's probably been on my mind at least within the last couple of weeks. So, and kind of when I'm at the gym, has been continuing to sort of evolve and inform itself. So it's been good. And now I can put them, as we said last week, with contemplations about then turn it into action. So hence that current list. So now I can turn that into action. And then, all the stuff kind of falls out of that, which is a good insight of you seeing the whole, that they're outcome focused, because it is 100% that in this instance, because that's the level that I was working at.
Brilliant.
Parts and thoughts from you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously still very much in that reflection mode. And so always interesting to hear where you're at and your kind of progress and process. It's curious. There are times, so I'm very much that kind of teacher archetype, which I actually don't like to be. And I go through phases where I really wish I wasn't. And that's usually when I'm not giving myself enough space, enough sense of self-worth. So I'm kind of curious, and I almost might play a bit with it. And this plays into the caregiver archetype as well. So it's that, I think I might play almost with being different archetypes and actually actively, consciously taking on different behavioral characteristics and kind of see what that does and how that turns out. But that's a bit of a longer experiment, really.
Cool. Put on the list of topics to cover biohacking.
Oh yeah, you mentioned mind hacking at the beginning, then we didn't talk about it. So
and biohacking, yeah.
So that would be really interesting, because I have a bit of an aversion to the fact that we use the word hacking in those terms.
It's just borrowed from computers is all. And
okay.
It's an ethos, which you would actually, once you delve into what the ethos of the hacker is, you would see how it totally fits with personal development.
Which is a great example of not taking something at face value and going that bit deeper. Yeah. Okay. Noted.
Yes. Okay. So some things for listeners, a couple of things. If you made it this far and you're into this part of the podcast, which I guess we should probably say it in the middle and in the beginning as well, subscribe to the podcast. The links will be in the show notes, so make sure you subscribe and then you get it directly. It's a more intimate way for us to connect with and communicate with the audience. Or, if that's not your thing, you can go to our Twitter at DigitalCalm. If you're into Tumblr, you can go to DigitalCalm blog there on the Tumblr to find us and hang out with us on those particular spaces. I think we got an email somewhere, but I have to dig it up and we can put it into the show notes. And and just text us, tweet us, or DM us any questions or thoughts or anything that you want to add to the conversation, or anything particular that you would like us to discuss or hear us discuss and or talk about in terms of a topic. But definitely subscribe and get your friends to subscribe too. That'd be even better.
Like, subscribe, and share.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well,